Good day, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Military and Foreign Affairs Network. I am your host, the voice of reason, and today we are continuing our coverage of the ongoing war between Russia and Ukraine. We are continuing to watch the situation develop in and around Bakhmut. Obviously, this map you are seeing is more or less I don't want to say more or less, it is a pro-Ukrainian map. It is probably the best and most updated map where we can get fairly reliable information about what's happening on the ground. I have noticed from time to time the map may not show the true extent of Russian territorial gains. But nonetheless, we're going to continue to use the map, and specifically we're watching what's happening around Bakhmut. So it's very important to, as you look at this map, to try and understand what you're seeing. So obviously the stuff in this orange color is areas controlled by Russian forces. The area in gray could be defined as contested or active fighting taking place. So essentially what you're seeing near Bakhmut is the eastern side of Bakhmut is much under the control of Russian forces. Now, it does look like the Russians are starting to push both from the south and more extensively now from the north as well. We're going to do a quick look at what has happened over the course of February. And I think it'll give you a pretty good idea of the Russian strategy to simply batter Ukrainian forces. Again, there is a vast array of Ukrainian troops that have been committed to this operation, and there's fear in the Ukrainian circles that if this defensive line were to collapse, the Russians would very rapidly be able to move into or get very close to Kramatorsk and Sloviansk. Now, would that happen? Difficult to say. We believe that there are essentially three major defensive barriers right now that the Ukrainians have put up. Obviously, one is along the line of contact near Bakhmut, where the actual fighting is taking place. Another one exists outside of Kramatorsk, and they have created these fortress cities of both Sloviansk and Kramatorsk, where they intend to conduct a repeat of exactly what we have seen inside of Bakhmut. I don't think you would see a rapid move by Russians after the fall of Bakhmut, where they would rapidly move into the center of Kramatorsk. It doesn't look like that is going to happen. Now, with what's to come in late summer, that could be a different story, but let's watch that develop and see exactly what happens. But right now I'm going to fast forward where you, the viewer, can see over the course of February how things have changed near Bakhmut. So here we go. And again, you can see what's happening. It is this very slow, methodical push by Russian forces. And when we say slow and we say methodical, that does not mean that this fighting is not devastating. From anecdotal reports from both sides, the fighting has been vicious. Both sides have sustained horrendous losses in these battles. I don't believe that the Russian losses are to the extent that the Ukrainians are reporting. Right now, the Russian strategy is, yes, they use infantry in these urban areas near Bakhmut, but again, their main course of strategy is the use of heavy artillery and long-range rocket systems, and we're continuing to see that occur. I would say that the casualties are probably on par with each other. It's difficult to say what the Ukrainian casualties are in the rear. The Ukrainians don't talk about their casualties, but nonetheless, when you're pouring quite literally tens of thousands of heavy artillery into the rear areas and along the front lines, you are going to inherently take casualties, meaning the Ukrainians. And the Ukrainians simply don't report on that information. but we have no doubt that casualties have been extensive and continue to be so. Now, what's next? We are continuing to hear now about the possibility that the People's Republic of China could supply the Russians with lethal weapon systems. I believe already the Chinese are helping the Russians, especially in terms of non-lethal aid and supplies, especially equipment and technology that is needed to reproduce and replicate existing Russian systems, such as optical systems and so forth and so on, that the Russians use from everything from its aircraft to its main battle tanks and armored infantry fighting vehicles. The Russians are continuing to produce armored vehicles. They are continuing to produce aircraft. We do not believe that there has been a decrease in Russian production ability. Rather, we believe at this point there has been an increase in the Russian military-industrial complex in producing weapons of war. But at this point, we believe now that the Chinese could be prepared to send a variety of drone systems and precision-guided loitering munitions to the Russians. The Chinese have been quietly collecting technology over the decades. They have proven technology that has been used by the despotic regime of Eritrea and Abiy Ahmed's former state of Ethiopia against Oromo People's Liberation. The Oromo Liberation Army and the Tigrayan Defense Forces. So we know that those systems have been used, and in all probability those systems will be transferred over to the Russians, especially the what you would define as kamikaze systems, which are in fact fairly advanced loitering systems that can maintain a presence over the battlefield, looking for radiation signatures maybe coming from air defense radars, and then attack those systems, allowing other Russian systems to become more effective. Now, those systems will also be used against transportation capability of the Ukrainians, supply capability of the Ukrainians. We have seen that similar Israeli systems, and a lot of what the Chinese have right now are based on Israeli systems. Back in the early 90s, late 90s, whenever it was, the Israelis had handed over the Harpy to the People's Liberation Army. And that system has been analyzed by the Chinese and then reproduced. And the Chinese have then extended their technology by taking that initial Harpy technology, and even more drone technology has now come to fruition within China. And they are using that technology to actively produce an array of some fairly advanced systems. Now, are they comparable with some United States systems? Are they comparable with Turkish systems? I would say they're getting close. They really are. We have seen evidence that the Chinese do produce some high-quality attack drones now, unmanned aerial attack vehicles. But right now it looks like the Chinese will be handing over these loitering munitions of various types to the Russians. And it's reported that the initial batch could be up to 100 drones. It's a small drop in the bucket, but this will be the start of what could be very large-scale deliveries by the Chinese to the Russians. And I believe at this point the Chinese are very much interested to see how their battlefield technology holds up in a high intensity environment, the likes of which we are seeing in Ukraine. We are seeing the transfer of some very high tech U.S. technology and Western European technology, electronic warfare technology, jamming check technology, radar technology to the Ukrainians. And the Chinese are very much interested to see how their loitering munitions and drones hold up in that environment, that highly advanced electronic warfare environment, which they will undoubtedly be able to see. And at the same time, the Chinese, are watching what's going on over the battlefield with their surveillance satellites, and they're watching this very closely, and they're learning. And in all probability, it has them concerned about future operations against Taiwan. Taiwan is a much more advanced technology base in Taiwan, with its semiconductor sector that has also been transferred to some of its weapons industry as well. So the Taiwanese are producing some very advanced weapon systems of their own, not just weapon systems that have been handed over by the United States. So again, the Chinese are very much interested in what's happening on the ground, and in all probability, we'll see the deployment of Chinese weapon systems to the Russians. But we're going to continue to watch this. We're watching what's happening in Bakhmut very, very closely. As we have said before, this pressure campaign by the Russians is continuing. It is, again, a methodical, a brutal fight that is taking place. And we will continue to cover and report on what is happening on the ground. Thank you for joining us today. More to come very, very soon. And as always, have a good day.